Hello and welcome back to another Walking Dead video, and today we'll be doing my ranking on the top 10 best villains we have had in The Walking Dead. And to clarify, before we go into this, I am not doing villainous groups, I am doing individual villains, so that counts the main villains plus the minor villains and antagonists that we got throughout the seasons of The Walking Dead. But before we jump into this list, let's do an honorable mention and say Joe. Joe is the leader of the Claimers, and he is in only a handful of episodes at the end of season 4, but he has a massive impact on characters like Daryl and Rick, and because of his iconic scenes at the end of season 4, he deserves to get a mention in this video. But in 10th place, we have Pamela, and she has some really cool ideas for a villain. She is one of the most unique type villains, as she doesn't pose a physical threat to anyone. Her threat to our people are through the power that she holds over other people. And I do have to mention, she has one of the best villain themes in The Walking Dead. I absolutely love her theme. But the problem with Pamela is she's only a villain for like 4 episodes. And you can understand her being a villain. She's very fleshed out in her descent to madness because she lost her son Sebastian. And we get hints that she lost a second son before the events of the Commonwealth arc. So this is a woman that has lost her entire family, and she just wants to get revenge and to deal with her grief. But her arc is 4 episodes, and she's outshined by Lance, who is a secondary villain in her arc. The Commonwealth arc is Pamela's story, but she doesn't get time to shine in it, so she can't be any higher than 10th place. Moving on to 9th place, and we have Gregory, and he is much like Pamela, with him not really having the physical power to beat you in a fight, but he is like Pamela, with him just being able to use his words, and he can manipulate people successfully most of the time. The reason why he's in 9th place is because we do get time to flesh out the character that is Gregory, and you can understand his reason for being this weasel villain. He is very interesting, and he gets a very good send-off. I think that he died at the right time. Some villains have an issue of outstaying their welcome or dying too soon, but Gregory lasted long enough to fully play out his arc, and his arc really helped push forwards characters like Maggie, so he has to be on this list. In 8th place, and probably my most controversial one on this list, has to be Negan. I am not a fan of Negan as a villain. He is a great anti-hero and one of my favourite characters, but when he was in season 7 and 8 as a villain, he almost came off as pantomime-y. The problem with Negan is that at the start of season 7 and the end of season 6, he was a great villain. The build up to him was amazing. His first couple of episodes were amazing. He was terrifying. But the problem is he went on too long, and the longer Negan went on, the more dumb situations got and the more pantomime he just felt. It was really dumb to see Negan and Rick meet every other episode, fight, no one gets injured, and then break apart and then do it all over again. Negan's arc was just kind of meh, and mostly that is because the villain himself, Negan, wasn't a very interesting villain when he's been outshined, a lot like Pamela, by secondary antagonists. A lot of Negan's big iconic comic scenes were moved to another villain, and all they were really doing was taken away from the main villain, and it ruined Negan a little for me. In 7th place, we have Gareth, the leader of the Hunters / Termites, and he is one of the darkest villains we've got on The Walking Dead. The best thing about Gareth and his termites is that he is fleshed out. We understand why they turned to cannibalism because we see a flashback where Terminus was a sanctuary, and because they were attacked once, that led to them changing their strategy and then using Terminus as a trap instead of a sanctuary. He is also one of the villains that do not outstay their welcome and is very entertaining from start to finish. He is only in 4 to 5 episodes, so his arc is in the pocket. It really works for Gareth, as we don't have time to get bored of him, but we learn just enough information about him and his group to fear him and to understand everything that we need to know about Gareth. In 6th place, we have Simon, and this is Negan's right-hand man to the Saviours, and he is definitely the superior of the two villains, purely because Simon is solely created to do Negan's darker things. Negan was a good character in the comics, but in the show he is split into 2 characters. For some reason you have Negan, and you have all of Negan's dark things embodied in Simon, and it makes Simon a very entertaining villain, and he's one of the most unhinged villains on this show. It definitely does help that you have an amazing actor, Stephen Org, playing Simon, who has somewhat typecast to play crazy characters, and he does it well. Simon, it's a shame he was under Negan, because if he had his own arc, we could have maybe have had Simon do a lot more. He was held back by being a secondary character to Negan, which is a shame because he could definitely carried his own arc. In 5th place is going to be Lance, and he is such a good villain. He outshined the main villain of the final season. Everyone remembers it as Lance's season, not Pamela's. Lance is such a compelling villain with this like kind of face value of him just being a nice guy, but each episode as the season goes on, the layers get pulled back and you see this corrupt man, this man who just hungers for power, and it's just that slow burn on Lance, which really makes him such an entertaining villain. Like, he's just gripping. Like, the first time you meet him, he's all nice and he's like, oh, I'm going to purposely orchestrate things so you get in trouble, so that means you have to help me. He's a man who has this wider plan, and you never really know his full extent of how far his fingers go into the root of the Commonwealth. The only issue with Lance is that he gets killed off in such a bad way, and he definitely should have been the one to be the villain until the end of the season, not have him die in episode 20 and have Pamela pick up the villain role for the last 4 episodes. It really ruins Lance just as he's about to go full on villain, as he's swinging that pendulum straight into insanity, and they just cut him off too early. I agree with them having Carol kill him off, but maybe Carol should have killed him off later after. He definitely should have been the one to take Pamela's role, and Pamela should have maybe died instead of Lance. Now, in 4th place we have Beta, and he is truly the most terrifying villain in The Walking Dead. No other villain comes as close to Beta at being absolute tankish and terrifying. And the only thing that ever held him back was Alpha, really. Without Alpha, Beta is way more dangerous. Like, he goes immediately sane without Alpha. Without Alpha, he is off the wall, just gonna talk to walkers and everything like that. The only issue with Beta is that we didn't get time to really have him as a solo villain. He was always the sidekick to Alpha. He was Alpha's muscle. He never really had his time to shine. And when Alpha died, what did Beta do? He kind of went insane, hid in a bar, listened to his own music, and then had Daryl and Negan just kind of swipe him out in one swift motion. We definitely needed more time with Beta, and he's one of the few characters where he was rushed. They were like, we got rid of Alpha, we got to rush away Beta. And you could have definitely done half a season with Beta, I definitely think, with him being a solo villain, and flesh him out to like see how far his insanity could go. And it's just a wasted potential, really, with Beta, and that's why he's in 4th place. In 3rd place, it has to be Shane, and he is such a compelling villain. We watch him over 2 seasons slowly descend into madness, it seems, but he is such a nuanced villain. You really learn that, no, he was just faster at adapting than everyone else. And Shane has a lasting impact on the show. Without Shane, a lot of our characters would have been ready for this world, and they probably would have died, if not at the Governor arc, but before. Shane got our characters prepared for the end of the world, and it was a shame that he adapted so fast. Everyone else saw him as a villain when he just knew what was needed to survive. He is such a good villain, people can look at him and be like, yeah, he's not a villain, he was just right all along. It's a bit like the Thanos memes, Thanos was right all along. Shane is on like that type of level where he is such a relatable villain. He's almost seen as the actual hero in some situations. Now runner-up, and we have Alpha, and I absolutely love Alpha. She's definitely the most unique villain, with her being really the only villain that isn't trying to rebuild some sort of civilization. They're just living like animals. And she's definitely one of the most powerful villains, with her being able to control and influence so many people, like Beta, who would easily defeat her in any sort of fight. She has the will and control over such big people, and it really shows how powerful Alpha is. She has such a personal and sympathetic backstory and reason behind why she is what she is. Her whole motivation is that she wants to protect her daughter, to the extent she does all these crazy things and eventually pushes her daughter away. This just makes Alpha one of the most tragic villains on The Walking Dead, with her trying as hard as she can to save her daughter, and eventually it leads to her daughter leaving her and her own death. And in first place, we have the Governor. I'm pretty sure everyone expected him to be in first place. He is definitely the most nuanced villain we've had on The Walking Dead. He is not a straight-up villain. He's a character that just goes to the extremes to protect people. All he wants to do is protect everyone that puts their trust in him. The Governor is just a character that hates being a leader. He hates what the power does. And his whole thing in Season 4 is that he had to feel like he had to take control of that new group. Even when he killed the leader, he said he didn't want to do this. He knows when he becomes the leader, he will have to do bad things again. He doesn't like being that person, but he feels he has to do it to save other people. It also really does help that the Governor is played by David Morrissey, who's an outstanding actor who really develops the Governor and makes him more than just this black and white villain than he is in the comics. In the show, he's this character which has these flaws and he has motivations. We understand what he is doing. He is a very broken character because of he's losing his family, and it's just that little bits of information here and there which really make the Governor feel alive, and he is such a well-rounded character. He is definitely my favourite villain. But please tell me down below, what are your thoughts? Do you have a different list or do you agree with my list? And make sure to like and subscribe to help with the channel and to keep up to date with all Walking Dead content, list, reviews, breakdowns, theories, all things Walking Dead on this channel, so make sure to subscribe to not miss anything. So goodbye, peace out, I'll talk to you in my next video.